Time now to turn our attention to the international newspapers. Leo McGuinn joins us in studio. Leo, you've been taking a look at how that fall of the Assad regime is being reported upon.
I'll start with those who are more celebrating the news. This is Arab News, which is a paper owned by the Saudi government. Assad ousted is the headline. They have an article, Syria has a bright future without Assad. The writer says we're seeing beginnings of a new Middle East free from the external interventions that have long troubled the region. The article finishes by saying the future Syria will be friendly to all nations. Half of the Syrian population living abroad have gained valuable experience and hold high aspirations, positioning them to participate effectively in the country's reconstruction. Across to Israel next, of course. An opponent of the Assad regime, Haaretz make the point that Israel should no longer fear Vladimir Putin. The main reason Israeli officials had stated for rejecting calls to more openly stand with Ukraine in the past was Russia's presence in Syria. Now with Assad's fall and Russia's total retreat, that is completely irrelevant, they say. Let's look at the other side now. This is Tehran Times. Iran, of course, a country with close ties with Bashar al-Assad. They surmise that failure to form an inclusive government in Syria will create a powder keg, the consequences of which will spill over into the entire region. I'll finish with Al-Akbar, a Lebanese-based newspaper with close ties to Hezbollah, long-time backers of the Assad regime. They have the headline, "The New Syria is a challenge to unity." Inside the paper this morning, they say that the people of Lebanon must reflect what this means for their country. They say over the past 76 years, tremendous change has taken place, but what has remained constant and strong is the American tyrant and its evil arm, Israel. The independence of Lebanon, as well as Syria, they say, will only come by confronting both countries.
Interesting. Let's move on, though, Leo, to South Korea. Their president narrowly avoided impeachment at the weekend.
You can see the front page of the Korea Times. Political turmoil has intensified after that botched impeachment vote, which fell short by just 5 votes in the end. The opposition party have promised Yoon's early resignation as well as exclusion from duties, but haven't given any sort of timeline. They also report on their site this morning that the police are reviewing whether to impose a travel ban on the president as he's being investigated for treason. When asked about the possibility of arresting Yoon without a warrant, one official said it would be possible if the requirements are met. Looking at the Korea Herald, conflict erupts over ruling camp's takeover plan. The ruling Conservative PPP party have said that they will rule once Yoon has resigned, but the opposition have said that's unconstitutional. The Korea Herald also ask the question, can Yoon be suspended without impeachment? Well, under Clause 84 of the Convention, the President cannot be charged with a criminal offence during his tenure of office except for insurrection or treason. That means with the protection of the Constitution or without any binding changes, Yoon may take power back whenever he so pleases, if his party stay in power. Chosun Ilbo, which is the country's leading newspaper, a more conservative, right-leaning paper, report on the fallout of the declaration of martial law on the army. Top generals have been suspended, leaving operations in disarray, and a leadership vacuum within the army. Large-scale drills have been cancelled and delayed, leaving the army in complete disarray since that declaration last weekend. I'll finish with Hankyoreh, which is one of the country's other biggest papers, a more left-leaning. This editorial this morning saying that the failure to impeach Yoon will be gravely judged in history. The ruling PPP party turned their back on the Korean people, they say. Out of 108 PPP lawmakers, only 3 actually voted in that impeachment vote. In a poll conducted by the paper, 74% of people support the impeachment, and the ruling party should brace itself for the wrath of the Korean public for shooting down that impeachment bill.
OK, volatile situation in South Korea. Finally, Leo, though, you want to bring us something very, very different, and to a story about perhaps the most expensive pumps in history.
Definitely the most expensive pumps in history, of course. We know The Wizard of Oz, one of the most iconic films of all time. And if you'd asked me how much those ruby slippers would go for, I'd say a lot, but not $28 million, as you can see in the New York Times this morning. That's what they fetched at auction last weekend. That's about 26.5 million euros, to put it into context. The slippers were worn by Judy Garland in the film. She tapped them 3 times and said there's no place like home. The pair actually stolen in 2005 before being recovered 13 years later in an FBI sting. The man who stole them, just a side note, stole them because he believed they were made of real rubies, which he planned to sell. Turned out not to be true. They're actually made of glass.
With the price, I was actually looking to see, is it real rubies?
No real rubies. No, actually made of glass, but still worth $28 million, apparently. And they're one of only 4 pairs that were worn by Garland in the movie. They weren't the only famous piece of Wizard of Oz memorabilia sold at auction. A hat worn by the Wicked Witch of the West fetched $3 million. The auction house actually blown away by the final price. They expected the shoes to reach about 10 million, so they were fairly surprised when it reached nearly 3 times that. Unsurprisingly, that's the highest sum ever spent at an auction for a piece of entertainment memorabilia, exceeding the previous record holder, which was Marilyn Monroe's subway dress from the 1955 film The 7-Year Itch, which in 2011 sold for 5.5 million, so nearly 5 times the price. I mean, they're pretty iconic, but I'm not sure they're worth 28 million.
28 million? You just wonder who bought them and what...
They're going to be looking very pretty in them, that's for sure. I hope they wear them. I hope they get good use out of them.
I can't imagine they will, Leo, but thanks a lot for that look at the international papers.